He told us there were a lot of bad people out there. And he taught us a little bit about conspiracies and things like that.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I believe in God, you know?
Does that faith sustain you?
Of course it does.
There's another one involving Michael Jackson's housekeeper's son.
Jason Francia did disclose that he was fondled by Michael Jackson, and that a lot of times during the fondling acts, Michael would slip money in his pocket, presumably in a way to keep him quiet and not disclose the information to his mother.
He brought a claim, and that claim was settled, and he was paid out.
To substantiate the case by Chandler against Jackson back in 1993, police officers interviewed at least 40 to 60 children, and according to some sources, up to 100 children who had either spent time with Jackson personally or had been at his Neverland Ranch. To the frustration of police, every single child interviewed told authorities that Jackson had never molested them or did anything inappropriate to them, nor did Jackson act inappropriately in their presence. Desperate by the lack of corroborating victims, the police engaged in questionable tactics while interviewing the children, even to the point that the parents turned to Jackson's attorney, Burt Fields, to complain about the harassment. Fields wrote this letter to Los Angeles Chief of Police Willie Williams in 1993. Dear Chief Williams, I represent Michael Jackson. All my adult life I have been a staunch supporter for the LAPD. For years I represented Jack Webb, working with Jack on Dragnet and Adam 12. I met many officers for whom my respect and admiration continues to this day. Your comparative handful of officers who risk their lives every day to protect the rest of us deserve our unqualified appreciation. Sometimes, however, even a dedicated police officer, when engaged in a significant investigation, loses the sight of the importance of fairness and respecting the rights of the accused. In the current investigation of Michael Jackson that has occurred, officers investigating the matter have entered the homes of minors and have subjected them to high-pressure interrogation, sometimes in the absence of their parents. I am advised that your officers have told frightened youngsters outrageous lies, such as, "We have nude photos of you," in order to push them into making accusations against Mr. Jackson. There are, of course, no such photos of these youngsters, and they have no truthful accusations to make. But your officers appear ready to employ any device to generate potential evidence against Mr. Jackson. In addition, your officers have told parents that their children have been molested, even though the children in question have unequivocally denied this. They have also referred to Mr. Jackson as a paedophile, even though he has not been charged, much less convicted, and harassing minors and their parents is not all. The search conducted at Mr. Jackson's residence resulted in the removal of many items of his personal property, including his address book, which includes the names and addresses of potential witnesses. We have asked for either the return of such records or that they be copied at our expense. This has been refused in order to hamper the defence in conducting its own investigations of the case. These tactics are not merely inappropriate, they are disgraceful. Even the New York police, not known for their gentility, refrained from conducting this kind of overzealous campaign against Woody Allen, who was accused of a similar offence. Why is the LAPD not according to Michael Jackson the same degree of balance and fairness? I urge you to put an end to these abuses. Investigate these accusations as thoroughly as possible, but do it in a manner consistent with honest common decency and the high standards that once made me proud of the LAPD. Sincerely, Bertram Fields. A tape recording of the 1993 interrogation of Corey Feldman, leaked by the TV show Celebrity Justice during Jackson's 2005 criminal case, serves as an example of how these interrogations were conducted.
Child star Corey Feldman and the secret police tapes obtained exclusively by CJ. Hello everyone, I'm Holly Herbert. The 80s star and the cops who've seen this strongly believe he was a victim of Michael Jackson. James Les Mitchell has the never-before-heard tape that could rock Jackson's molestation trial.
Nothing ever happened with Michael.
You are listening to an interview between actor Corey Feldman and Santa Barbara Sheriff, obtained exclusively by Celebrity Justice, recorded in December 1993. In it, Corey states not once, but numerous times, his friend Michael Jackson, who he hung out with, didn't do anything improper with him.
If there was something that I've been hiding for all these years, then I would want nothing more than to bring it out right now to make sure that Michael got the help that he needed.
Our last weekend together, Feldman gained fame as a child star in the 80s with The Goonies and Stand By Me. He was just wrapping up National Lampoon's Last Resort at the age of 22 when he was grilled by Sergeant Deborah Linden and a detective looking to bolster their molestation case against Jackson involving another boy. On the tape, they hammer in on Corey's deep friendship with the superstar.
What concerns me about it is that if there is something, if something did happen again, I'm telling you, is that you wouldn't because of that.
No, I can't put myself in the position of thinking would I or wouldn't I because nothing happened.
Corey told investigators as a young teen he did 2 sleepovers with Jackson. Once after a trip to Disneyland when Corey was about 14. He says they checked into a hotel near the amusement park.
There was one bed in the room and he asked for a cot to be brought up. He got the cot up there, we hung out, we talked for a little while, so he got tired. And he insisted that I slept on the bed and he took the cot because he didn't feel it was polite for him to take the bed.
But Corey repeatedly insists to the skeptical cops nothing happened. Not then, and not the time he slept over at Jackson's Encino home.
We stayed up all night, we talked and we did stuff. We prayed together before we went to sleep. And he was wearing his pajamas, and I was wearing my pajamas.
And, says Corey,
So we took it to see, we talked, nothing happened.
What was it around?
Yeah, I think he had an extra pair of songs that he sang.
but Sergeant Linden doesn't seem to buy Corey's story.
It was a little funny when I asked about the jacuzzi.
I did?
Yeah.
Corey again insists.
He never did anything out of one. I mean, anything. You know? I mean, the closest he ever came to touching me was like maybe slapping me on the leg once. You know, to talk about that I'd lost weight.
Shockingly, Corey does claim he had been molested, but not by Jackson.
I myself was molested, so I know what it feels like to go through those feelings. And believe me, the person who molested me, if this was him, you know, that did that to me, then this would be a different story because I would be out there up front, you know, doing something immediately to have this man given what was due to him.
Even more shocking, Corey actually named his alleged abuser, but the detectives seem to express no interest in investigating the man. The cops seem to only have eyes for Jackson.
We've interviewed a lot of people, and we're still doing it. We're still in it.
Right.
We have not uncovered things that would clear him right now.
Feldman, who had been friends with Jackson since he was a teenager, is interviewed by Sergeant Deborah Linden, and despite Feldman repeatedly telling her that Jackson had never done anything inappropriate to him, she continues to suggest that something must have happened. For over an hour, she pressures him to say something incriminating about Jackson. In actuality, Feldman tells Linden that he had indeed been molested as a child, but not by Jackson. Though not disclosed by Celebrity Justice, Feldman in fact named his molester, information that the investigator completely ignores. The investigator seems only interested in acquiring incriminating statements about Jackson. At the time of the interview, Feldman was 22 years old. However, many other children went through similar interrogations, sometimes without parental supervision. While the prosecution struggled to find credible corroborating victims for their case, many kids and their parents came forward in support of Jackson. In addition to telling the investigators that Jackson had never done anything inappropriate to them, many of these children and parents even publicly defended Jackson. After Jackson's arrest in November of 2003, during a press conference broadcasted live globally, District Attorney Thomas Snedden appealed for victims of Jackson to come forward. A website for alleged victims to get in contact was even set up by the prosecution. Furthermore, both in 1993 and in 2003 and 2004, officers were sent all around the world to interview children who had been in contact with Jackson in one way or another. During these processes, they didn't find a single accusation of any wrongdoing, with one exception, Jason Francia, for perceived improper tickling. It is suspect that this information was obtained by using highly questionable interrogation tactics during the 1993 and 1994 interviews. The police pressured 13-year-old Jason Francia, questioned on November 4th, 1993, and then again on March 24th, 1994. Jason is the son of Blanca Francia, a maid who worked for Jackson between 1986 and 1991. And who was among those of ex-employees of Jackson who earned money off the allegations by selling stories to tabloids after Chandler allegations broke in 1993. It was the police who initiated the contact. Blanca and Jason Francia never turned to authorities. Jason Francia initially told police that Jackson had never done anything inappropriate to him. He said, "I'll just say this out flat. I don't remember him trying anything with me except for tickling." When the police pressured him to remember wrongdoings by Jackson, he maintained, "If I don't remember, I don't remember." At Jackson's 2005 trial, Jason claimed that he initially denied improper behaviour because of embarrassment. However, audio tapes and police transcripts of his 1993 and 1994 interviews reveal how investigators pressured and led him to create questionable allegations against Jackson. In a motion in opposition to the DA's motion for admission of alleged prior offences, Jackson's defence classified these interviews as textbook examples of improperly suggestive interrogations. A paper written by Kenneth E. Blackstone, a member of the American College for Forensics Examinations International and an expert on sexual offence investigation, explains how interviewing methods can make a child's testimony tainted and unreliable, leading to false allegations. On page 11 and 12 of his paper, The Fallibility of Forensic Interviewing, Blackstone lists 9 factors which raise suspicion of improper interrogation techniques that can lead to false allegations. These factors are: 1. Absence of spontaneous recall. 2. Interviewer bias against defendant. A preconceived idea of what the child should be disclosing. 3. Repeated leading questions. 4. Multiple interviews. 5. Incessant questioning. 6. Vilification of defendant. 7. Ongoing contact with peers and references to their statements. 8. Use of threats, bribes and cajoling. And 9. Failure to videotape or otherwise document the initial interview sessions. The first 8 of those 9 factors can be observed in the interrogations of Jason Francia. For example, on November 4th, 1993, in a police interview, Francia told investigators he did not remember Jackson ever putting his hands anywhere that made him feel uncomfortable. Detective Vincent Neglia was not satisfied with that answer and made it very clear what answer he would be satisfied with, by suggesting to the boy that his memories were wrong and blatantly suggesting what he should remember. At other times during interviews, investigators lied to the boy and said that other boys, such as Macaulay Culkin, had been molested by Jackson, and the only way they could rescue them was if Jason said incriminated things about Jackson. They also claimed Corey Feldman had drug problems because Jackson molested him. Both Culkin and Feldman stated very firmly to authorities and the public alike that Jackson had never molested them and never touched them in an inappropriate way. The investigators referred to Jackson as a molester in their interviews with Francia, even though they did not have any evidence against him. They also used derogatory profanity against Jackson, for example saying, "He makes great music, he's a great guy, bullshit." At one point, after the investigators told Francia what they thought Jackson did to him, the boy said, "Well, I'll have to work on that." In one of the interviews, Francia said, "They, meaning the interrogators, made me come out with a lot more stuff I didn't want to say. They kept pushing me. I wanted to get up and hit them in the head." In the second interview on March 24th, 1994, Francia indicated he was aware of the fact that another boy, Jordan Chandler, had sued Jackson for money. After initially denying any wrongdoing by Jackson, Jason Francia gave in to the pressure. In 2005, while under cross-examination by Jackson's lawyer, Thomas Mesereau, he admitted that he said things in those interviews because he was trying to figure out how to get out of there. It was also revealed that after the police's first interrogation of Jason Francia in 1993, he was sent for therapy with a counsellor by the name of Mike Kraft. District Attorney Thomas Snedden was present at least one time in Kraft's office while Jason was there. Though Jason could not explain what communication went on between the two men and why Snedden was there at all. According to an article in USA Today on February 7, 1994, the therapist Jason Francia was sent to see was arranged and paid for by the county sheriff's officer after the boy's mother expressed concern that the sheriff's deputy had called and met with her son without requesting her presence. Although the prosecution was obviously desperate to find another alleged victim besides Jordan Chandler, charges were not filed against Jackson based on Jason Francia's claims. However, Jason's mother, Blanca Francia, taking a page out of the Chandler's playbook, hired a civil lawyer and at the end of 1994 threatened Jackson with a civil lawsuit. In actuality, Blanca Francia talked about wanting to sue Jackson for money at least as early as March of 1994. While the criminal investigation was still ongoing with the Chandler case behind him and a plan to release a new album in 1995, Jackson settled with Francia's out of the court. As testified during Jackson's 2005 trial, 2 settlements were signed with the Francias. One with Blanca and another with Jason Francia. Reportedly, Jackson paid them $2.4 million. It must be noted that only a criminal trial can send a perpetrator to jail. A civil trial can only result in monetary award. So, like the Chandler settlement, this was not a case of Jackson buying his way out of a criminal indictment. 2 grand juries had already decided in spring of 1994 not to indict Jackson. However, a civil trial could have resulted in a long, drawn-out court process with lots of negative publicity for Jackson, which, regardless of the lack of credibility of the allegations and the outcome, would have affected Jackson's ability to promote a new album that he planned to release in 1995. The language in both the settlements with Blanca and with Jason Francia emphasised that there was no admission of any wrongdoing on Jackson's part. The fact that both Jason and Blanca Francia were called to testify at Jackson's 2005 trial is a clear indication that the settlements of civil lawsuits do not and cannot prohibit anyone testifying at a criminal court. Francia's allegations were heard in a court during the 2005 proceedings and they were not found credible. To put the $2.4 million he paid out to the Francias into a perspective, Jackson's record label, Sony Music, spent $30 million on the promotion of Jackson's double album released in 1995 entitled History. The first video of the album, Scream, cost $7 million. And a teaser that was shot for the album in Budapest cost $4 million. Even if Jackson had won the civil trial against the Francias, it probably would have cost him more than $2.4 million in lawyer fees and loss of earnings, as it would have put his projects on hold for several years or at least would have heavily compromised them. During Jackson's 2005 trial, Jason alleged the first act of impropriety occurred in 1987 at Jackson's Century City condo in Los Angeles. When Jason was about 7 years old, according to his story, while his mother was cleaning the condo, he and Jackson watched cartoons on the television and Jackson supposedly started to tickle him, which resulted in a tickle contest. Jason claimed that while tickling him, Jackson's hand moved down to his crotch and he touched his genitalia area above his clothes. A second act of impropriety was described similar to the first one, occurring in the same place, again while watching cartoons. 1.5 years later, this time when Jason was about 8 or 8.5 years old, Jason again claimed while watching cartoons, Jackson moved behind him and began spooning him. Jason claimed that he started to tickle him and while doing so, Jackson again touched his genitalia above his clothes. He claimed the contact with his genitalia area lasted at least about 4 or 5 minutes. A third act of impropriety was claimed to have happened at Neverland in the arcade when Jason was about 10.5 years old. He claimed while playing a video game, Jackson again started to tickle him, and somehow they ended up on the couch in a spooning position. Jason claimed that this time Jackson put his hand in his shorts and touched his testicles. He alleged this lasted about 3 or 4 minutes. At this point, Jason felt the need to voluntarily emphasise it took a lot of counselling to get over, just to let you know. Jason further alleged that every time Jackson tickled him, the star put a $100 bill in his pants. Jason claims he never told his mother about the alleged abuse. "I don't even think to this day she knows," he said on the stand in 2005, even though his mother hired civil lawyers and threatened to sue Jackson over the allegations in 1994. During the 2005 trial, Jason Francia's testimony was not considered credible by the jury, and the improper police interrogations which led to his allegations were not only the reason. Other than the alleged impropriety, Jason Francia did not seem to know or remember anything on the stand and was caught in several contradictions and lies. At the very least, this young man seemed to have extremely bad, unreliable and ever-changing memories. At the age of 24, Jason sat on the stand and claimed he did not know if he ever signed a settlement with Jackson. He claimed he had not heard about the payment of $20,000 his mother received from the tabloid TV show Hard Copy until 2 days before his testimony, and that he never discussed it with his mother. At first, he claimed he never told his mother he was improperly touched, but then admitted he did, claiming he was mistaken earlier. He claimed he never told the lawyers who represented him in 1994, Terry Cannon and Chris Coleman, that he was improperly touched, but later on in the testimony he said he did not know if he ever told them, and even later he said he did tell them. In one of the interrogations, Francia claimed that during a tickle episode he blacked out, and because of that he did not remember anything besides the tickling. In 2005, when Mesereau asked him if he had blacked out, how could he have told the police that his mother was not in the room? He answered, "I blocked it out. I didn't blank it out." It is important to note that Jackson's condo was a small apartment, and the alleged improper acts occurred while Blanca Francia was present, cleaning up and able to walk in on them at any time. When the police asked Jason if anything inappropriate had ever happened to him at Neverland, he said, "I was around too many people." When they pressured him about the third account of tickling in the arcade, the incident where he now alleged Jackson put his hand in his pants, initially Jason said he did not know if Jackson touched him inappropriately while tickling him. In actuality, he said he was not sure if Jackson even tickled him at all. Mesereau pointed out that in an interview with the police in October 2004, Jason claimed that this third tickling incident lasted more than 10 seconds, but he did not remember exactly how long. At the trial, only a couple of months later, Jason suddenly remembered that it lasted for 3 to 4 minutes. When Jason Francia was initially interviewed by the police in the 90s, he claimed that Jackson promised him money each time he read a book or achieved a good grade, because Francia had difficulties in school and with learning. This story later somehow evolved into Jackson putting money in his pants after each tickling. During the trial, when asked if attorney Terry Cannon still represented him, Jason said, "I don't think so, no." Later on, said he did not know if Cannon represented him. Mesereau reminded him that Cannon was present at a meeting Jason had with the prosecutors on December 6, 2004. At that meeting, Jason did not want the interview to be tape recorded. When Mesereau asked him why, At first, he claimed to not remember that he made that request. When presented with the documents that showed he indeed did, he could not testify what his reason was, responding, "I don't know," and "tape recording is weird. I don't know. No, I don't." Documents also showed that he requested Cannon to be present at the interview, but Jason said he did not remember why Cannon was there and whether he asked him to be there or not. During the trial, when asked whether any criminal charges had ever been filed against Jackson based on his claims, Jason answered, "I don't know much. I don't watch the news." Mesereau asked Jason about another meeting which prosecutors held on November 19, 2004, when his mother was interviewed in the DA's office. Again, Jason first claimed to not know anything about it. "I don't know. Me and my mother don't talk about that stuff much." However, when Mesereau pointed out to him that he was present at that meeting, Francia all of a sudden remembered. "Now I remember, yes." In actuality, not only was Jason present, but he too was interviewed by the prosecutors, and he asked that the interview not be tape recorded on that occasion as well. Again, Francia did not remember any of this. He did not remember that an interview by prosecutors that lasted for about an hour took place at all, although it happened only a couple of months before his testimony at Jackson's trial. So not surprisingly, Jason Francia did not make a good impression on the jury at the Jackson's trial. Jury foreman Paul Rodriguez told Nancy Grace in an interview after the verdict that the jury had a hard time believing that Jackson had molested Jason in the past and said, "It was hard to buy the whole story when he acted like he knew nothing about it. I mean, he acted so much like the mother of the other accuser. You know, he just didn't seem that credible. He didn't seem to convince us like we wanted to be convinced. And he was leaving too many little loopholes in his statements." It is very telling that Rodriguez put Francia's testimony on par with that of the mother of the other accuser, Janet Arvizo, which was widely regarded even by pro-prosecution journalists as a disastrous witness for the prosecution.
So, Mike, she didn't seem quite as wacky as yesterday, huh?
Well, I wouldn't use the word wacky, but the prosecutors may need several hats to hang on several pegs because the story kept moving. As one legal analyst, Jim Murray, put it, as the morning wore on, it seemed that this accuser's mother's meds wore off because she returned to the form of yesterday when she was totally unpredictable and totally uncontrollable under the very careful and gentle questioning of Assistant DA Ron Zonin. She got back into the whole litany about the killers, she kept calling them, who she said she was told had arrived at Neverland so she couldn't go there, who were going to kill her kids, who were going to kill her, who were going to kill her parents, on and on and on.
And everything about this woman says Michael is innocent. Remember, Bashir followed Michael and these kids around and never found anything that was sexual abuse. Sure, Michael was weird, he slept with kids, but nothing that constituted a crime or even close to it. Then she talks on this tape that we've seen and to protective services, nothing. Only after the fact, at this trial, when she can make a lot of money, if Michael is convicted, she spins everything that helped Michael with a negative spin.
I think by putting on these witnesses to claim that Michael had molested 5 other young men, 3 of whom we put on, who said he never touched them, the 4th one never showed up, and the 5th one was a so-called youth pastor who claimed he was tickled outside of his jeans and needed 5 years of therapy. As well as a lot of money for himself and his family, as I recall. And I don't think he turned out to be a good witness at all.